Hello and welcome, dear listener, to the Tyre Straight podcast. I am one of your two slightly knowledgeable hosts, Scobbert, and I'm joined this week, as I am every week, by my co-host,
Doots.
Indeed. And this is the podcast that discusses F1 and other motorsports across the year, week in, week out, in some level of depth. So, good week so far? Good week so far, sir?
Yeah, we're finally getting back towards actual motorsport coming back.
Yes.
It's been a while. We finally got Miami coming up soon, which I'm certain we'll talk about later, with gritted teeth.
Yeah,
but,
I was about to say, I can't remember the last time I was actually excited for Miami.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I've been excited for Miami.
It's been so long.
It's been too long.
I've forgotten what George Russell's face looks like.
Yeah, I've missed hearing the German national anthem from the stadium.
Yes.
But but this is a bit of a different episode this week. This is mainly led by you on something I don't know all that much about.
Yeah, so just yesterday, as of when we record, the spring race at Talladega for the NASCAR Cup Series took place. And in spirit of that, and also just because we haven't had F1 in a little while and we need something to talk about, we're going to be going over the Talladega race and a bit of the history of the track and some of the moments it's produced over the years. So,
indeed, but before we get into that, I think it's worth we talk about the general news for Formula One and F1 related stuff that has happened in the past week since the last episode. And let's start with a big one, and it is a big, happy celebration because the Turkish GP is returning next year in 2027.
yes.
Istanbul Park is back.
Is it?
And it's just good to see another, with the return of Portimao as well. But Portimao's a little more untested, whereas Istanbul Park, we have had brilliant races there already.
Yeah. Is it confirmed to be Istanbul Park?
It is confirmed to be Istanbul Park.
I obviously only heard that it was the Turkish GP, so
yes.
I was slightly worried that they were going to just dump it in the middle of nowhere.
Which was a little bit strange that they just came back out and saying, it's like, yeah, it's the Turkish GP. They didn't say anything about where it was. And there's like, if they had brought back
the Istanbul
GP,
Street Circuit.
Yeah, I would have blown a fuse.
I would have visited Stefano Domenicali in his sleep.
Physically or in his dreams.
Both.
Fair enough, but no, it's very good. Have you got much thoughts on it? You happy?
I'm happy. It's a confidence thing as well. I feel more confident that F1 management still have some semblance of knowledge on what to do, because they're actually bringing back a proper road, circuit instead of a street circuit. And obviously, we've got a billion street circuits when we used to have a few. And it's nice to see that we're not just continuing to do, this street circuit that we've just built in this place has a lot of money behind it, so we're just going to race there for the next 20 years. So it's nice to see an actual racing track on the F1 calendar. Who would have thought?
Yeah. No, I think the cutting, because they're for next year cutting out Zandvoort, and they're starting the rotation thing with Spa and Barcelona.
Ridiculous.
And basically because this reduction in track number technically means that there's two open slots, and I'm glad that they haven't just done two more street circuits to fill those gaps. They have actually put in older or like more established circuits, which would be good. I mean, Portimao, we saw two races there, and we wanted to see more. Like, it was good there.
It was.
For the two races. And Istanbul Park has been like consistently solid the whole time it was around, if a bit chaotic at times. But, a bit of chaos really helps.
Yeah. In other news that has emerged in the week since we last convened, it's a lot of it's come out of Italy, actually, where in Milan, prosecutors have dismantled a luxury prostitution ring that allegedly served VIP clients, which included a lot of sports people and celebrities, including an unnamed Formula One driver. Now, it wasn't specified if this was a past or present driver, but obviously that's huge if it is especially a present driver, or at least one of a big name. And would you care to speculate as to who it could be?
Well, you see, the thing is, do we think it's past or present? My bets are past. I don't think it would be a present F1 driver.
No, I mean, I haven't looked deep into it, so this could be like dating back a few years or decades even, you know?
Possibly. I mean, yeah, it doesn't know, it hasn't been much specification on when this F1 client, engaged in what would you call it? Group? Business? Ring?
Yeah, ring, I think. Illicit,
right.
illegal activity ring for naughty
people. Whatever. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's not specified how long ago this was.
No.
If I were to take a bet out of current F1 drivers on the grid, it's between the Alpine drivers.
The thing for me is, it's obviously in Italy, so my assumption would be that it's someone who spends a fair bit of time there, and that makes me think it's a Ferrari driver of past or present. So,
what you see, that's the
yeah, go on.
That is my thought, is because it's between the two Alpine drivers, because one, Colapinto has that kind of young, cocky energy that I feel like he would try and do some bullshit like that.
Emphasis on the cock. Sorry, that's insensitive.
A tiny bit. But the other thing is that Gasly lives in Milan.
Oh!
So that would make a bit of sense from a practicality standpoint.
Yeah, it's just down the road. Don't worry, love, I'm just nipping to the shops, but in French.
I'm just going to the bar for a bit, don't worry. No. I don't think it is a current one. I think it's more likely to be a former F1 driver.
Yeah.
Most likely someone who's only been involved in like tests or like one or two races back in like the early 2000s or something, and then obviously can state they are an F1 driver.
I reckon probably someone with a bit of Playboy energy about them as well. So I could see it being like an Eddie Irvine character.
Jacques Villeneuve.
When I think about it, because now that I've said Eddie Irvine's name, he has got a bit of a Playboy reputation, and he was in fact a Ferrari driver.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked. You heard it here first, folks. If it was the case, if not, I'm about to get sued for slander. So this is nice while it lasted.
It depends how far back this dates, because if it goes back far enough, then the answer's James Hunt. Like,
if it goes back far enough, it's Alberto Ascari. Nino Farina.
Yeah. No. Anyway. Regardless, moving on.
To more Italian legal problems.
Yeah, to more Italian legal information, I guess. I don't know much about this, but the Italian tax authorities are apparently conducting a crackdown on foreign athletes, including F1 drivers, for unpaid taxes on income earned while racing and playing sports in Italy. So, for example, Monza, Imola, and Mugello since 2020. The only one who's not been implicated in this would be Lindblad, because he technically has not raced in Italy yet.
No.
For Formula 1. I think he would have for F2, but still, I think if it's only at like top level sports.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the boundary for this is, where they draw the line or not. But obviously, I think the thing is, obviously, Formula 2 drivers don't make any money from the sport.
Yeah.
Because obviously their money all comes from sponsorship rather than an actual salary. So I think that's probably why Lindblad's the only one who's not implicated, because even if Formula 2 would have raced at Italy, would it be Monza last year? Either way, regardless, he would not have paid anything. Well, he wouldn't have earned anything, thus not paid anything. But yeah, it's a law in Italy where basically athletes and sports persons have to pay a tax on, it's like a duty on earnings that they win from events which take place in Italy. So
Yeah, but it's an odd one because technically there are no direct earnings for winning one race.
But
So how would they calculate that?
I really couldn't tell you. I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait and see as to what happens with that. That'll be
See if anything.
That and the previously mentioned tale will be something to keenly keep an eye on in the F1 world over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But we could see some prosecutions, but possibly considering F1 drivers love not paying tax. Most of them live in Monaco for a reason.
Yeah. Apart from Gasly, it seems.
Yeah. He lives in Milan and is a patron of this illicit prostitution ring.
Yeah. But no, moving away from Italian policing and politics.
Pierre Gasly and Eddie Irvine locking eyes. Nervously sweating.
Back onto a little bit of actual F1 news. The only other thing that's happened is at a recent filming day at Silverstone that Red Bull were taking part in. They have been seen testing a Macarena wing, which is the kind of wing Ferrari have been using and testing where it flips fully upside down. The actual implications, whether this is just for show or just a very early test, or they're actually planning on implementing it, because a lot of people are bringing upgrades for Miami. There's always the chance that they bring it with to further test or use. But it's interesting to see that innovation is clearly being copied, so there's some advantage to it, it seems.
Hey, Macarena. Hey! That's my contribution to that one.
Fair enough. And I believe that's it for the general news. So
yes, that wraps up the news for this week. Do genuinely keep an eye on what might come out from the Italian authorities over the next few days, because it could be big and have big implications for the Formula One world and indeed, obviously, the drivers. So anyway, just to move on to the meat and the veg of this video. No, meat and veg is the wrong thing, isn't it?
The main course.
Meat and veg is slang for the male sexual reproductive organ.
Yeah, meat and potatoes is what you're looking for.
Meat and potatoes, that's the one. The bulk of the video. Sorry for the persistent references to sexual topics. Yesterday, like I said earlier, we had the 2026 Jack Links 500, a 500-mile race at the Talladega Superspeedway. And in the spirit of this event that has just taken place, I wanted to do a little bit of a dive into the history of a little bit of NASCAR and mostly of Talladega, the track itself, because it is interesting and chaotic and is indeed reflective of the race that we just had. So I think I'll start at the very beginning, with the very beginning of NASCAR. And that started with one man by the name of Bill France. And he enjoyed stock car racing and actually often drove his parents' Model T at a nearby board track to his town. And board tracks were basically these oval tracks, sort of similar to the ones we see today. But as the name would imply, they were built out of wood instead of, tarmac, cement, anything, concrete, whatever,
Avis. Just like the brick walls of Avis.
Yeah, exactly. And back then, stock car racing was completely different to how it's obviously viewed now. It had no central governing body, like obviously in the Western world that we live in, we have several governing bodies for motorsports, like the FIA, the FIM, and indeed NASCAR. And that led to races back in the day being very poorly organised and sometimes shady, with organisers often not paying the drivers the winnings they were owed for the events they took place in. And seeing this, Big Bill, as he became known, he moved to Daytona with less than $100 to his name, where he worked odd jobs, I think at one point doing painting and decorating, until in 1948, he, alongside drivers, car owners and crews, would organise the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, also known as NASCAR. And this would become a centralised governing body that would oversee most stock car racing in the time since. And and with the races that followed, things got exciting very quickly. And it did lead to better organisation and a proper, national championship. But there was something that was needed. It needed this big main event, In, like, the football world championships, you have, like, the final. You have the Super Bowl in American football. You have, I don't know what other equivalents, but you know what I mean. There's always like this big.
You got like the Indy 500,
the Indy 500, Monaco Grand Prix.
This big, like the like crux of the whole championship. It needs like the jewel in the crown.
Yeah, exactly, the jewel in the crown. It needed this marquee event. So in 1956, Big Bill set out to construct the greatest racing track in stock car racing ever, and that became known as Daytona International Speedway, which was a 2.5-mile superspeedway with a 31-degree banking that can seat nearly 150,000 spectators, making it one of the top 10 biggest, like, sporting, well, at least racing venues in terms of the amount of spectators that can sit. And the first ever Daytona 500, which was run in 1959, immediately became the greatest event on the NASCAR calendar. It became that crown jewel event that was lacking. But what's weird about it as well is it's not the Daytona 500 doesn't take place, in the very middle of the season or at the end. It's the very first round of the season. So, it gets things going quite early. But this was not enough for Bill France, of course. They didn't call him Big Bill for any reason at all, really. But, in 1968, he decided he'd do the exact same thing again, copy the same formula, and he would build an even bigger track with even more banking in the form of the 2.66-mile monster with 33 degrees of banking known as Talladega Superspeedway, which would be completed in 1969. And since its inception, the track has been known for basically all sorts of chaos and carnage and just energy. And it's produced so many incredible racing moments, and that's what I'm hoping to get into in a moment. Yeah.
First and foremost, I want to actually ask a quick question. What counts as a stock car?
So,
because to most people, don't actually know what a stock car is generally. At least I certainly don't, as someone who doesn't watch NASCAR much.
So, to loosely define a stock car, it kind of originated in that sort of 1930s, 1940s era that Bill France would have participated and then, spectated as well, where you took a car, the same car you could go down to your local dealership and buy, and then you'd race it. It was a stock car. There was nothing done to it. It was just, they'd probably strap a roll cage to it and, any other things that, any other important bits that were considered safety equipment back in the 1930s, and then they'd roll off. And over the years, it's kind of, I will admit, been slightly blurred, to be honest, because they've less become, modified versions of the cars you can buy. I mean, back in the day, you had basically bog standard Dodge Chargers, the same ones you could buy in a dealership, just racing at full speed with, upgraded powertrains for racing. That was about all that was different about them. But in the time since, they have since become more proper racing cars with just like a plastic shell that looks like the car that it's meant to represent, but they aren't really, their DNA is no longer the same as the cars that they are, pretending to be, I guess. But back in the day, it's especially true of stock cars where they were these, just regular production models that you got to watch hoon it round the track for 500 miles. And it gave way to this great saying, which was, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday, which meant that NASCAR basically became a huge stage for the, the muscle car manufacturers of the day to show off their cars, because you'd watch it and you think, I could have one of those. That's just won the Daytona 500. That's an awesome car. I'm going to buy one. And it's obviously, like I say, less so these days, but I guess what differentiates a stock car from an open wheel formula car is the fact that, an open wheel car has open wheels. Stock cars tend to be pretty durable compared to open wheel cars. You look at some of the crashes that happen in F1, even the mild ones, front wing's gone, front left wheel's gone. That's the race over, basically. At least with the front wing, you can continue the race, but you're probably going to have to go to the pits and repair it. Stock cars can get pretty fucked up and still not only continue to race, but sometimes can still continue to be competitive. I think it was, I'm getting sidetracked a little bit here. I don't remember what year it was, but there was a race where Dale Earnhardt Jr. won a race while missing his front wing panel. He had his front wheel exposed to the elements, which actually helped cool the tyre. So yeah, that's what makes a stock car a stock car. Like I say, the definition's a little bit blurred over the years, but it is intrinsically just a car you could go and buy.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And to sort of revisit that era when a stock car was truly a stock car, we go back to the first ever race at Talladega, which was the 1969 Talladega 500. And it does. I've picked it out. It's already been covered in YouTube videos and things, but I've picked it out because it perfectly encapsulates Talladega and just what its reputation is. Because this race is widely regarded as the worst race in NASCAR history. So to set the stage, after the track was completed, in 1969, only a year after it began being constructed, Bill France was trying to get his money back as quickly as possible. He's made a huge investment. He made, I think it was $1.5 million he paid to have it constructed, which for today's money is about $15 million. And that's obviously a big investment for them. So they wanted to get that track, racing as soon as possible. So during testing, prior to the 1969 running of the Talladega 500, the drivers Leroy Yarborough and Donnie Allison would raise concerns over the surface of the track, describing it as bumpy and even reportedly finding holes, potholes in it. And this was true. The track surface was significantly too abrasive to the point that it was shredding the tyres that they were using after only a dozen laps. I think there was someone else who was running in that test as well who only managed 4 laps before a tyre blowout. So the surface was proving to be a problem straight away. And that was only after 12 laps maybe, let alone the 188 laps it would take to complete the full 500-mile race. And the two tyre manufacturers in NASCAR at the time, Firestone and Goodyear, would repeatedly, over the course of the next few weeks, send harder compound tyres to the track in the days leading up to the race, but nothing seemed to do the trick, to the point that the Professional Drivers Association, which was basically a union led by Richard Petty at that point in time, they discussed with Big Bill about postponing the race until the surface or tyres or both could be, amended. And Bill France, in one of the most reasonable moments in discussion in motorsport history, his response was to tell the PDA that he believed that they were too scared to race. And imagine telling that to a bunch of rednecks. And in response to this, Leroy Yarborough would punch Bill France in the face, and the 36 PDA members, which were drivers, would basically just pack their shit up and leave, which left literally only a handful of Cup Series drivers left to race. I think it was 3 or 4 would actually take the race start. So obviously that's not the 40 that you'd expect to see these days. And in order to fill the grid, Big Bill basically allowed for cars from the lower division, the Grand American Series, to race in the Talladega 500. And just for reference, these were smaller and slower pony cars compared to the muscle cars racing in the top division. Cup Series, you had Chargers, you had these big sort of Thunderbirds, cars like that earlier in the years. Meanwhile, in the Grand American Series, it was Mustangs, Camaros, the sort of smaller pony cars. And they were nowhere near as fast. They weren't going to manage 200 miles an hour. And having these cars run in the big Talladega 500 race was effectively, to put into perspective, the same as if Formula 1 had Formula 2 and Formula 3 cars running during an F1 feature race. So it's a significant gap in performance. And on the topic of cars at that race as well, this race had a lot of hype and intrigue around it because it was marking the debut of one of the most famous like cars that the sport has ever produced, and that was the Dodge Charger Daytona, which was one of the two sort of winged wonder cars alongside the arguably more famous Plymouth Superbird. Obviously, the Superbird being the king in cars, you know, the Petty blue car, which was voiced by Richard Petty, who famously drove it. So this was a big moment for the sport, and a lot of people turned up just to see this car on track for the first time ahead of the next season when it would, you know, race full time.
Yeah.
And Firestone would pull out of the event due to safety concerns. And literally at like the final moment, like within the day before the race, Goodyear would send over one last attempt with the tyres with a harder compound, and these finally worked. Like, they worked well enough to the point that there was no like tyre-related issues in the race. So, sounds good. Sounds like everything's sorted finally. Nothing's going to go wrong. Except now we get into something else, and that was the NASCAR officials. Because back in the day, there was no digital telemetry or something like we have today. Basically, the way the running order of the cars was determined was the officials watching from above, basically like spotters, they would move like basically counters along a map of the track with, you know, representing each of the cars. And if all of the officials agreed that that was the running order, then that was the running order. And they only had, like I said, because only 3 or 4 of the drivers that didn't walk out, it was basically only 4 cars were actually competitive. And yet they still managed to cock it up. They messed up the running order. And eventually they would agree that the race was won by Richard Brickhouse, who was a PDA strikebreaker, he was going to walk and join the strike with the others, but he was offered an enticing deal to drive the Charger Daytona. And he indeed would go on to pilot it to the win. But second place finisher, Jim Vandiver, who was driving the older model of the Charger, accused NASCAR of rigging the race because he believed that NASCAR officials determined the race result based on the fact that the Charger Daytona had so much hype around it. So, NASCAR's first ever race at Talladega would end in controversy. And it's since then been well known for chaos, as well as, unfortunately, tragedy. There's a strong belief in something called the Talladega Curse, due to the strange incidents and fatalities that have occurred over the years. The 1973 Winston 500, in particular, would see a huge crash involving 19 that sent 19 drivers to the hospital, even ending the career of one of them by the name of Wendell Scott, who was a long-term driver at that point in time. And unfortunately, several drivers have not been so lucky as well, losing their lives at the circuit, not only while racing there, but also just being on the premises, with driver Davey Allison, who he tragically died after a helicopter crash in 1993 that took place in the infield of the track. So Talladega is kind of known for chaos, but also it has been known for some pretty like strange but also amazing moments. So to just move along a little bit, I've compiled like 4 or 5 of what I consider to be some of the greatest moments that have ever come from Talladega. And the first of those is the 1985 Winston 500, which saw the fastest man in Cup Series history, Bill Elliott, who I think to this day holds the record for the fastest time set in NASCAR with a 212-mile-an-hour lap. It might have been 214, but it was the fastest, and he was on this day the fastest, with his car dominating the race until his oil pump broke, which forced him to come into the pits, where he spent nearly 2 laps, aka 5 miles, you know, having to sit there and wait and watch the other cars go round. And after coming out of the pits following a bodge repair job, he absolutely charged. At speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour, he made up that deficit under green. There wasn't a caution or anything, no safety car equivalent for Formula 1 listeners. It was fully just green flag racing to the end, and Bill Elliott would go on to take the lead and win that race, which is incredible. That's like if Max Verstappen started at the back of a race, waited at the grid for 2 laps, and then set off and still won. So, huge moment. And that's one of the...
thing...
Yeah, go on.
No, yeah, question about that. When you say fastest, do you mean fastest in speed, or do you mean fastest in, like, race time?
So, at least in this point in time, and as like in terms of the way qualifying was decided, it was based on average speed through a lap.
Okay.
And Talladega has always had the fastest average speeds because, of course, it's the largest track. So there's no point at the track in which you brake. So you're able to just achieve that little bit more speed compared to a track of similar size like Daytona. And he had the fastest lap in history. I think it was a 214, I want to say, 214 miles an hour, which for reference was only like 20 miles an hour slower than the Indy 500 pole lap, which was done by the same system that year.
Yeah.
So pretty, the cars were getting really fast back in that day.
Incredibly pacey, yeah.
These days they've been slowed down for safety, so we won't be seeing any of that anytime soon. But they're still capable of pushing over 190, towards 200. So yeah, big speed from Bill Elliott. It's what he's kind of known for, as well as being the most popular driver in NASCAR history. But yeah, another moment, and one of the more strange ones, was the L.W. Wright incident. And this was during the 1982 Winston 500. Basically, a money launderer by the name of L.W. Wright, which was an alias, he used his quote-unquote earnings, which he'd conned several people out of, including NASCAR driver Sterling Marlin, to buy a race car and enter the aforementioned Winston 500 1982. And, straight away, none of the drivers, recognised his name. Even back then, like, there's never been, like, a set grid, where every single driver completes every round. There have been drop-in drivers, people who just attend for certain races. But, like, even with that in mind, none of the drivers knew this guy. No one had ever heard of him. But they just assumed he was some hick who'd, cut his teeth in dirt tracks in the middle of, like, butt-fuck nowhere. And even with that in mind, when questioned about things, his depth of racing knowledge seemed incredibly limited. And in spite of this and these glaring red flags, he made the race start and was immediately dangerously off the pace. And after a few laps of basically being in the way of everyone when they came around to lap him, he was ordered into the pits to retire his car. And he came into the pits and then walked away and vanished. His identity was never revealed until 2022, where he eventually was discovered, and he was arrested in 2023, but would pass away in January 24 from cancer before he could be sentenced at the age of 74. So, an interesting one there. Definitely one of the crazier things that's just randomly happened at Talladega. But even then, still not the most dangerous. And that would come a few years before, at the 1974 running of the Winston 500, in which there was a mass sabotage incident. And this was on the morning before the race was run. It was discovered that 10 out of the 11 fastest cars in qualifying had been mechanically sabotaged, with things, including but not limited to slashed tyres, sand in the petrol tanks, and severed oil and brake lines. And many of the drivers who did make it out on track reported other mechanical issues, with some cars forced to retire from the race. It's an actual miracle that nobody was injured, and the culprit was to this day never discovered, even though obviously what they did was much less sabotage and more or less, an attempted mass murder.
Yeah, it does bring the question though, with all these strange incidents occurring at the one track, what is it in the area of Talladega that causes so many odd occurrences like this?
So there's this thing called the Talladega Curse, like I said, and it's basically like an old folk legend, and it was Emp Lemon did a great documentary on not only the track but also the history as well. And for more in-depth stuff on that, you can watch his video. I'd recommend it. But it's basically goes back to when it was Native American territory, And when the natives were forced out during, United States land expansion, a shaman allegedly cursed the land so that it would never be prosperous for the people there that settled eventually. And that's kind of been what's this sort of in folklore is determined to be the cause of the curse. And obviously it's why so many strange incidents and unfortunate tragic deaths occur at Talladega. So it's definitely, there's an uncanniness to it, but at the same time, I feel like, in my opinion, it's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle thing, where it's not necessarily anything more crazy than what's happened at other tracks. I don't think Talladega has an immense fatality rate that's more so than any other track, on the NASCAR calendar, for instance. So yeah, it's a lot of weird things and obviously some tragic events. There was one point in time where Bill Elliott nearly went through a catch fence and nearly killed spectators. I think that was 1985. I want to say. I think so.
Possibly. You can have a quick check if you want.
I think it was at some point he went airborne and had a huge crash. I think Bobby Allison had something similar as well. So there's been some pretty crazy moments where cars have nearly gone through the catch fence and hit spectators, but luckily we've never had a 1955 Le Mans type incident.
Yeah.
But speaking of safety, there is the 1986 Winston 500 had an incident regarding the safety car. Well, the pace car in this case, in which case spectator 20-year-old Darren Crowder stole the pace car and began joyriding it around the track prior to the running of the race. After completing a lap at over 100 miles an hour, he was eventually apprehended by the police, while the crowd, who absolutely, loved it, were cheering and throwing stuff at the police. So that was quite a crazy moment and quite a funny one in hindsight. Because you think you've had people like LW Wright and you've had these sabotage incidents. After these kind of things happened, there was a lot more scrutiny paid to the cars that were racing, but I guess not enough was paid to the pace car.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that there doesn't seem to the safety and care for who can be allowed, security, and the other things don't seem to be as important.
No,
as I understand, other motorsports have definitely had their issues with safety, but it's being able to steal the pace car, being able to enter as an unknown driver, just vanishing from that.
Yeah, it's these weird things that have happened, but it goes back to that old saying it's loosely related to, where it's safety regulations are written in blood. It's one of those things where these things would not happen today, but they did happen then.
And there's security regulations based on one person who think it'd be funny to hop the fence.
Yeah, exactly. It's things like that people would not have expected to happen, but did happen, and that's where the change has arisen from on that regard.
That's fair. It's just a bit straight. I don't know. I just think.
Yeah.
I feel like other sports would have considered that someone might try and hop a fence or whatever, but
No,
regardless.
Yeah, exactly. There's I feel like there's a hope that people are just more sensible than that when these kind of things were first happening. But yeah, just one more sort of Talladega. It's not specifically a moment in time, more so moments, because I just wanted to quickly mention the late great Dale Earnhardt Sr., who on his own is one of the most iconic drivers in the history of the sport. One of 3 7-time Cup Series champions. And to this day, he holds the record for the most wins at Talladega, with 10 to his name across several events over the years. And Dale was so good at speedway racing, with he had an unrivaled understanding of the physics of the style of driving that came from speedway and plate racing, to the point that his contemporaries, the other drivers, they could have sworn that he was actually capable of seeing the air moving over and around the cars around him, which gave him this intimate knowledge of drafting and when to pull out and when to make his moves, with his number 3 car seemingly unstoppable on his day. And it's fitting to note that the last career win of Dale Earnhardt in his illustrious career would be at the 2000 running of the Winston 500 at Talladega. So, a great driver, leaving his mark on a track with a troubled past, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
So, with all that in mind, that takes us to 2026 for the Jack Links 500, which has just passed now. And I've got to say, and I think it helps me when setting this episode up as well, this was one of the most exciting weekends in recent Cup Series history. There were these huge and exciting momentum shifts, the big one, and a brand new winner. I should just explain, the big one is something that it kind of originated at Talladega, but has been appropriated across all the tracks on the NASCAR calendar. And it basically refers to a massive crash. It's almost like the expectation is that there will be a huge crash in a superspeedway race. And that's why it's kind of known as the big one. And the commentators, this year no less, they will always call it, they'll have this huge accident with several cars involved, sometimes wiping out like half the field. And the commentators will go, oh, there's the big one, in almost like a casual way. Because it's like, oh, well, this happens every time we're here. And that's kind of due to the nature of the racing. Yeah, it's just one of the things that you get with the restrictor plate racing that has come out of NASCAR since the 80s. And yeah, it's always kind of, nail biting. Everyone sort of holds on to something while they see it. But, nobody's been seriously hurt this year or in any other year as well. But yeah, this race was won by Carson Hocevar, his first career victory in the Cup Series, and it's been coming for some time. Hocevar was given the award of 2024 Rookie of the Year, and has had some great finishes and some great moments. A lot of people, including the great Richard Petty, have actually compared him to Dale Earnhardt. So he's been this sort of guy who's been chasing his first win for quite some time, but just hasn't quite had the legs to do it until now. But yeah, a massive win for him. Obviously, on the biggest and grandest stage of them all, he was able to throw down his sword and, proclaim himself the victor. And that is a huge moment for him and his career. So that was really exciting to see. And I must admit, with the driver I normally support being kind of out of contention by the late stage of the race when he was fighting with Buescher for the lead, I was rooting for Hocevar. I was really hoping that the Hurricane, as they call him, would get his first win. I mean, the Hurricane is one of two nicknames he's got. The other one, I don't know where it originated from, but it's one I hear all the time. And it's just his other nickname is just his name. So he is, like, I've seen comments where he is Carson Hocevar. So
that's just a name. That's not a nickname.
Well, that's what I mean. But it's like it's penciled in like the quotation marks as like a nickname in the middle. So
do all of the NASCAR drivers have like a nickname?
A lot of them do. Some of the more iconic ones are Dale Earnhardt. He was the Intimidator for his driving style.
Richard Petty is the king.
Yeah, the king. And then you had like Tony Stewart, who was known as Smoke because he had a bit of a short fuse at times. So yeah, some of the more notable ones do have like famous nicknames. But not everyone has one. A lot of guys have a more classy kind of appeal to them, I guess. But yeah, as a fan of Denny Hamlin, I've just also penciled in a little bit. Seeing him, bumped down because of a speeding penalty in the first pit cycle, kind of hurt a little bit. He literally took the lead at the end of the first lap and was leading for a lot of the time in stage one before that first pit cycle. And that penalty led to him basically being a lap down for the rest of the race until the final caution. And that's when he got the wave round, which basically is at a caution, the first of the lapped cars, so the one that is highest in the current running order, is allowed to unlap and rejoin at the back. And he only got that wave round at the very end of the race, which kind of meant he was still not in contention, even if he was finally on the lead lap again, having spent most of the race like P30 something. And it's a shame for him because it was clear he had momentum behind him, leading a lot of the opening stage of the race. and he ended up finishing in 15th, which, like I say, not reflective of the performance I think he was capable of giving, but oh well, we live. And then just also wanted to mention the big one, because at this race, it really was the big one. On lap 115, one of the biggest big ones in recent memory took place, involving 26 cars. 7 drivers out of those 26 suffered from terminal damage, which ended their races, unfortunately. And it basically started when Bubba Wallace and Ross Chastain made like a slight contact, literally just a small bump, but it unsettled the rear of Wallace's car, span him round into the wall on the outside, and basically all the other cars just piled into him. It is the nature of plate racing where the pack is completely like bunched together, like 3 wide bunched together, and 26 cars were not left unscathed. And 3 of the 7 cars that were completely taken out of the race belonged to, credible champions. So you had 3-time champion Joey Logano, 2-time champion Carl Larson, and 2023 champion Ryan Blaney. All of them could not continue, while the current championship leader, Tyler Reddick, did suffer damage but was able to continue, managing to finish 14th. Reddick was not really in the running for the lead at any point during this race, but he was running around like below 10th. So, but 14th is where he finished after taking a fair bit of damage. At the end of the race, you can see a lot of his car was held together by tape. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about stock cars being very durable. Because in the pit box, a lot of the repairs that are done are literally with tape, especially if it's the bodywork. So it was one of the big ones of all time. And I should just mention why the big one kind of exists. And that's basically because ever since the cars kept getting faster and faster and the accidents kept getting more and more serious back in like the 80s, back in the era when you had Bill Elliott doing a 212 or 214 mile an hour lap, whichever one it is, my memory's not so good. To slow the cars down, NASCAR introduced something called the restrictor plate, which was placed on the engine and basically restricted the amount of horsepower being produced to dumb it down to like the lowest level of understanding, because I am not a mechanic. And it meant that all the cars were roughly on the same pace. There was no one car like Bill Elliott's car in 1984, sending it around on green and overtaking everyone twice to win. That, it just meant that the entire pack was within like a few seconds of one another from 1st to 30th. So that's why everyone's so bunched together in a lot of the speedway races you might watch of a NASCAR race. But with all that said, if you missed this spring race at Dega and you're interested in future, don't be alarmed. There is another 500 lap race at Talladega held in October. That one being that's considered to be the Talladega 500, while the one that was just gone was previously known as the Winston 500, typically, although not exclusively. And it's the one in October has it's consistently been regarded as the most competitive race in NASCAR, typically. So that one will be, if anything, even better than this one, which it's going to be hard to beat with how exciting this last one was. But be sure to tune into that, and as well, if you do want to get into NASCAR or you are already into NASCAR, be sure to tune in for the race this coming weekend at Texas Motor Speedway. But
I did actually watch some of the highlights from this year's Talladega, and it was pretty good actually. The big one wasn't massive, absolutely titanic. But that was a pretty good fun to watch. It's a very different kind of racing. In the way it feels trying to compare it to Formula One is such a hard thing to do because they're just too different. Like they are That's
exactly
different.
It all comes down to a matter of taste, and it is. I think it's definitely a kind of prejudice that I myself used to subscribe to, where a lot of people who have never seen a NASCAR race or anything just consider it to be a lot of rednecks going left for 500 miles. And if you really, really, really dumb it down, I'm sure you can make a case that is in fact indeed what it is. But that takes away the essence of it and the driving skill, because these races go on for 4 or 5 hours at a time. They are endurance races. They're grueling, and they are killer. And it's NASCAR drivers are basically undergoing the same kind of G-forces that you'd expect to see in like a Formula 1 car, because while they're not cornering as hard, they're cornering faster. And they're doing it, consistently. And they're doing it while the next two cars around them are about 2 inches away from them. And they're doing it at 190 miles an hour.
That's definitely the big one, is that you've got to remember that while, these cars are like slower and it is much more rough and not quite as impressive like tactical racing as other motorsports.
Yeah.
You've also got to remember these cars are like sitting at as like fast as they can go a couple of meters from one another constantly for like hours and hours, like 500 miles.
It's literally, to put into perspective, the European Le Mans series, which I've mentioned a few times, the races in that are, I think all of them are 4 hours long. They're 4-hour endurance races with LMP2, LMP3, and LMGT3 cars. Meanwhile, NASCAR races are all the same length. There's no driver swaps or anything. There's no relief for the drivers. It's all just straight on, red line, 190 miles an hour, turning through all these corners with all these other cars around you. It's easy to have that big crash, and it's about how you avoid having that crash. It's that smart thinking and that patience that you need to have to be a good driver in Cup Series, at least on those. And also, the other thing I will mention as well, just for those people that think even after that explanation that it is all still turning left, NASCAR does drive at quite a few road courses as well. Well, it's what they call a road course. To you or me, they are basically just a proper racing circuit. One that will be familiar for Formula 1 fans is the Circuit of the Americas, and that's a track that NASCAR actually has already raced on this season in 2026, and that was also a great race. So NASCAR does. So they've
got Road America.
Yeah, they got Road America and
Watkins Glen.
I think so. I don't know if it's they have, at least in the past. I know that much. So they do run at a few.
I'm gonna quickly check on.
Yeah, I say have a quick Google. I'm just trying to think of a few others they might have done, because the thing is, I know some that they would have done a while back, but some of the more recent ones I'm not so good at, because NASCAR is something I've only really recently enjoyed in the last few years. So
the ones this year, the Circuit of the Americas, Watkins Glen. And they don't actually race at Road America apparently this year, but
they have
Sonoma Raceway.
Sonoma, that's it. That's what I was thinking of.
In California.
The only one I could think of, because it begins with S as well, was Sebring. I'm like, I know they don't race at Sebring.
Yeah, no, it's not Sebring.
No,
it's definitely not Sebring.
It's just the only one I could think of. Oh, so that's IMSA, I know. Yeah, it's the only one I could think of for some reason, annoyingly. But they do drive on proper courses. And also, if you remember a few years ago, the Garage 56 entry at Le Mans, I think it was 2023 Le Mans, you had the Le Mans 24 Hours. You had a NASCAR Cup Series car, Camaro, driven by Formula 1 world champion Jenson Button and 7-time Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson. And with literally a few aero upgrades just to make it more conducive to, an extended period of road course racing, it was competitive with the GT3, GTE cars, that were on track. And not only that, it was easily one of the best sounding cars on track. So if you're not a fan of NASCAR, I would at least say just give it a try. Because like me, you may have a pre-existing prejudice about it, but you might find that it is in fact, as it truly is to be, awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a little dive into it at least, and there's some great documentaries that like other YouTubers and people have made as well about the sport. So be sure to check those out if you want to get more into it, because it's a very easy gateway into the sport.
Yeah. No, brilliant. That has been a nice, good chat about the NASCAR.
That's me waffling for a bit, but yeah.
It's been very interesting though, regardless, even if it has
good.
been.
I'm glad.
I haven't really had much to input. I'm not as knowledgeable on this stuff, and I'm certain when it comes around to some other motorsports, Formula E or WRC or MotoGP, I can rattle off to you about that.
Yeah.
But that is fine. However, speaking of MotoGP and WRC, I think as long as you're done with
I'm ready to move on.
NASCAR
Yeah.
for the moment, perfect. I think it's time to go into our other series discussion section. Usually we would start with NASCAR, but obviously we've just discussed the Jack Links
Oh,
500.
I can if I must.
If you want to recap it again, you can. But we've kind of already covered that, so I'm just going to quickly dive into MotoGP. Brief cover of it. It was the Grand Prix of Spain, which held at Jerez, and a bit of a tale of two halves between the sprint and the main race. The sprint was won by Marc Marquez. Rain that hit midway through led to a ton of crashes, including both of the Aprilias going out, the test riders and Toprak, Alex Marquez crashing, and after Marc Marquez crashed out of second in the running, he then managed to keep his bike up and running, take it back to the pits, driving not through the pit lane but just across the circuit, as specifically the runoff area,
Right.
and pass it crossing into the pit lane from the runoff area, as that's where he'd crashed. So a little bit controversial from some people, but nothing's been brought up about it. To change his bike to wet tyres, which then led to him going out in front once everyone else had dived into the pits or crashed, and him taking the victory after passing his teammate Bagnaia, which led to a Ducati 1-2 out of completely nowhere with Marquez and Bagnaia first and second, and then Franco Morbidelli in third, pulling up his first actual proper somewhat okay performance of the year on that VR46. But that was only the sprint, because in the main race, it was the complete opposite story, where 2 laps in, Marc Marquez low-sides the bike, slides into the gravel, and completely flips over. He completely lost it. Thankfully, he's unharmed, based on his injuries that he currently still holds. It's great to see that he's unharmed. But in his stead, his brother Alex goes through to take the win. Second year in a row he's won in his home circuit. And then to follow up in the misery of Ducati, Bagnaia has a mechanical failure, meaning they go from 1-2 in the sprint to double DNF in the main race. Obviously, unsurprisingly, the Aprilias have still been climbing up the top when there isn't the rain to throw them off course, so Bezzecchi comes in to take second. And there's been a brilliant drive from the Trackhouse boys of Ayagura and Raul Fernandez in 5th and 6th, with the podium rounded off by Di Giannantonio. The other one I want to briefly mention is Johann Zarco, who on his LCR Honda somehow managed to put it second. Just absolutely out of nowhere. But Jerez is always a good track for MotoGP. It's always the start of the European leg of the series. And it's a good way of easing you into it. Especially with the amount of Spanish riders there are, there's so much support from the crowd. But that's MotoGP. The other one, staying in Spain, technically, but in a very different part of it, we've got WRC with the Rally Isla Canaria, if that's how you pronounce it, or the Canary Islands, which was won by Sebastian Ogier in his Toyota. It was a bit of a Toyota whitewash, in all fairness, with I believe 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all the Toyota cars, with the number 5 being Oliver Solberg, who was running second, insanely close to Ogier behind him, but then suffered a crash on the final day, which led to him being completely out of the rally and unable to finish, which is a massive shame. With Ogier only having a partial series this year, though, it's not that big a deal. It's not gonna change tons in the championship order, but what it has done is it has moved Elvin Evans up to take the top spot of the championship for the moment, overtaking Takamoto Katsuta by 2 points, as he got P2, followed behind him by Sami Payari, who has been incredibly consistent. After his retirement in the first rally, he's gotten a podium in every other rally since, but no win yet, and I'm certain he will get that victory soon. But yeah,
nice.
I believe that's it.
I just wanted to quickly tack on one that's not really another series, but it's something that I personally take a fair bit of interest in. And you might be familiar with it because it has been seen on YouTube a couple times before. And over the weekend just gone, we had the Buckmore 24-hour kart race, and that's something that I follow because I race go-karts, in my free time, and it's something that I've got some people and friends that I know that were participating, and it was the pro class was won once again by Nameless Motorsport, now another year in a row for them. So that was pretty cool. But I'd just like to also shout out ECR Blue. Great, that I know a few people on that team as well, and they managed to take the podium in the rookie class, which is awesome. So really proud of everyone that I know that obviously took part in that race. And if you want to watch some cool racing that's a bit out of left field, kind of in the spirit of what I've mentioned about NASCAR today, then definitely watch some karting stuff, because that's always great fun. And if you've ever been go-karting, you know just how crazy it can get. So yeah, the 24-hour was good this year. I tuned in where I could. And
when are we seeing the custard there?
we actually, so for context, my karting team that I'm part of and help run / founder of, we were actually going to enter the this year, but we couldn't get it booked in time. I think it was this year. It sold out in 73 seconds. It's a huge event. Like that is It's like a nationwide thing, and even international. Like we've got like are you familiar with Cameron Dass? He's like a racing YouTuber who's raced in like Formula cars and like GT3 cars, and he was actually there as well. So it literally attracts people from other countries like across the world at this point. It's like, to my knowledge, I know that other 24-hour karting races exist. I know that the Daytona tracks in the UK have them. I know that there was there's something similar at a track in Spain that I saw recently, and I know that the new Silverstone karting track has one coming up. But the Buckmore Park one is like the premier one. It's the one that people know. It's the one that has been like raced in by YouTubers and people like that. So it's got like a lot of coverage to it. And yeah, if you didn't watch it this year, watch it next year. And if you can enter, that'd be even better.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, just wanted to quickly tack that on the end. Yeah, sorry, yeah. It literally just occurred to me. I was like, oh yeah, that happened.
no, that's all good. Definitely worth mentioning. We're probably going to talk about karting at some point in a later episode.
I'm planning to bring that up.
Yeah, that's for another day. However, we do have this week, and we did mention it at the beginning, Miami finally getting back to it, which also means we're going to be getting back to the predictions.
Oh yes, the predictions that we've been doing so well in.
We've been doing mixed in. We got the week-on-week predictions essentially. But the episode before our review episodes for the Grand Prix, so just before the Grand Prix happens, we will do predictions for how the race will go. Certain things about it. Our topics are the race winner, who we think is going to win the race, the race binner, who we think is going to have an awful race, like a markedly bad one, the flop of the tops, which is specifically the worst driver out of the top 4 teams, those being at the moment Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren. And then a wildcard prediction where we have to choose something that we think will happen or not happen or X, Y, Z. That's a little out of left field, but not completely out of the blue. Like, it's not going to be someone explodes or whatever. It's going to be, like...
Was it the other week when I said just Oscar Piastri dies?
I think I said something like Gasly detonates or something like that. Yeah. A bit of a joke at one point, but
I wanted to put Colapinto podium as one of them as well.
Yeah. So we're not going to do like something that's completely never going to happen.
What do you mean never going to happen?
Yeah, but I was more talking about the exploding thing, but
also possible.
But no, and for this week going into Miami, we're currently on a score as we're tallying how well we've done. It's currently 3 to 1.5 between me and Scott.
Yeah.
At a half point coming from Verstappen kind of having a really floppy race.
Yeah, it's
But,
a dubious half point, but one that I wholeheartedly accept, given that otherwise I'd be very far down by now. But
so I need
yeah,
to hold my lead.
yeah. At the end of the year, we're going to do like a little award show with a bunch of stuff to come. But in that show, one of the things we will be doing is seeing who had the more predictions right, who got more points on the tally compared to the other, and then a prize of some variety will be awarded to the individual who was better at predicting things.
Indeed. Speaking of which, shall we start getting into them?
Yes, yes.
All right. Do you want to start with race winner?
Yes. So the race winner for Miami will be George Russell. I think I'm playing it safe here. He's obviously proving to be fast. That Mercedes is just better than most of the other cars on the grid. And I think out of the two, although obviously Antonelli has been faster lately, I think George is the one with the cooler head, the more mature head, the one with the more intimate knowledge of Formula One and the car. And I think he's going to bounce back and take a race win in Miami. So that's my thinking, at least.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Whereas I have gone the other way around. I've gone for Kimi Antonelli to take the win here. This mainly comes from the idea that last year out, he managed to get the pole position for the sprint quali. So he clearly has some amount of pace around Miami already as a circuit. I mean, Russell did come like one position above him in the main race, I believe. He came third. So Russell definitely did better in the main race. But still, I think that Antonelli will have the leg at this round, especially throw a bit of rain in the mix. I feel like a bit of chaos could mix things up a tiny bit, as there is rain forecast.
Is there?
Which should be good. Yeah, it's forecast for Sunday. Ooh. So should actually spice up the difference between the sprint and the main race.
Miami might finally be interesting.
It might actually have a good fucking race. But no, I've gone for Antonelli. I think he'll get it this round.
Okay. Well, to move things along to the race binner category, Gabriele Bortoleto will be the race binner. I don't particularly think there's any specific reason for it. I just think some sort of issue, whether it be he does an oopsie and drops it, or there's a mechanical fault of some variety, and I think he won't be finishing the race. So it's a bit of a, the thing is, the Audi obviously is brand new, and I wouldn't say obviously an untested commodity at this point now that it's obviously run a few races this season, but the fact of the matter remains that it has proven so far to be reliable, but is that going to remain the same? Is it just been lucky the last few races for a brand new power unit never used before, with no years of development behind it aside from what they were able to observe from Sauber? It's going to be interesting to see. So I think something's going to go wrong, or Bortoletto's going to go wrong. Either way, race binner.
Fair enough. Well, it seems that Audi is completely in the mud for Miami, because I've gone for Hülkenberg to be my race binner.
Right.
And I think it's going to be along the same. I'm uncertain whether it's going to be a mechanical failure or just a complete lack of pace around the circuit. But something tells me it's just not going to go well for Audi.
Yeah.
It's just, certainly Hülkenberg in particular, is just going to flop. They're just going to, he's going to mill around at the back. He's going to have a poor qualifying, mill around at the back of the grid, maybe climb up a bit. Something's going to overheat. He's going to fall all the way back, and then they may just pull in the car to retire.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Well, in the spirit of not doing well in the race, moving to flop of the tops, I have gone for Lando Norris. So far, and not necessarily his fault, he has had possibly the worst title defense since Jody Scheckter. And this season has not been good for him so far. He's obviously not had the car underneath him to get any meaningful result, that would help him in a championship charge early. I just think this might be a race in which he pushes himself a little bit too far, obviously having won here before, the last, I think, 2 years now, isn't it? I want to say he obviously. I know he won in 24. I'm trying to remember if he won last year.
No,
as well.
no, I think Piastri won last year.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it now. Yeah,
yeah,
Piastri.
you know.
I know he won 24, and that was obviously his first win.
Because that's when he tried to do the gritty and just completely
Of
fucking
course,
failed.
yeah, that was it. Yeah,
And he won 3 in a row.
Even then, like Norris is obviously knows this circuit well, but I think just with the car not quite having the legs underneath him, he's going to overextend himself, push a little bit too hard, and maybe drop it through a corner, or perhaps make a bit of contact with a barrier that puts himself out. So whatever the case, I think it's going to be just something goes slightly wrong for him, and bang, that's curtains.
That is very fair. I think that my flop at the top is Lewis Hamilton. I think off a good run of 3 races that he's had so far this year, I think it's time for him to struggle a bit.
Lads, I've had my 3.
I think it's going to be that he just doesn't have a good qualifying and isn't able to pass because it's Miami.
Yeah, okay.
And so I just think he's going to be... I mean, I guess there is the long straight round the back where you could pass quite easily.
The Ferrari's obviously got good pace there.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just see something going strange so that it's not that he crashes or anything, but he has a particular just lack of pace throughout the weekend, which brings him below the rest of the top. Like, sort of finishing 8th kind of thing.
Tragically dies.
Yeah. Hopefully not, but... Because then everyone will be lauding Miami, the circuit. They'll be like, "Oh no, but it's such a historic place because it's where Hamilton passed away."
Oh god, I thought you meant people were going to hate it because of the fact it killed Lewis Hamilton.
No, it'll be martyred or something.
No. I think the opposite. I hope the opposite. To round out this round of predictions, I come around to the final one, which is the wildcard prediction. And my wildcard prediction is that there will only be one Mercedes on the podium. I'm not trying to give myself a second flop of the tops and say Antonelli, has a head-on collision with a bus or something. But I'm just trying to suggest that maybe he doesn't finish on the podium, finishes 4th or 5th, Obviously with Russell being being the race winner, as of my, as my prediction clearly states, I think we're only going to have the one Mercedes on the podium. Like I say, Antonelli, maybe not quite doing quite as well as his last few races. Sort of similar to Norris, just kind of overextends himself maybe a little bit and loses a crucial position, and that drops him down to 4th or something. But that's fine. So
I apologise. I apologise if there are noises coming from my end. There is a particularly loud bike that is going past my flat.
Tell him to shut up.
I kind of can't, but regardless.
Say it louder.
I've got the window open. It's quite warm in here at the moment. It's been very nice and sunny.
Just cook yourself then.
No.
Close the window and bake. Anyway,
for me, my wildcard prediction is that there will be no safety cars in the race.
Ooh.
Specifically safety cars. I will say VSCs as well.
Really?
Like no VSCs either. But if it's a red flag, then that doesn't count.
Okay.
So only if there's a safety car or a VSC, then I don't get it. But if there's none, sorted. Yellow flag, fine. Only the safety cars. I just think that the rain may throw things for a bit of a loop, but I don't think Miami has it in it to be enough of a chaotic site for that.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think anyone's going to get... I mean, there's a chance always, but with the new regs, but I don't think there's, people are going to get close enough racing-wise to, really...
Let's wait and see just how right or wrong we are.
We shall see.
But obviously, that is all to come next week. So please, dear viewer, do join us again then. If this is your first time viewing, welcome. Thank you for listening. If you've gotten this far, please do give us a subscription on whatever service you are listening on, whether that be YouTube or Spotify. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at Tyre Straits Podcast. We are a very small podcast, as you may have noticed, with our 12 views or something. So any questions that you might have, you can send them in our YouTube comments, or if there's any equivalent on Spotify, I don't know, or indeed Instagram comments or even DMs. And if you have something you'd like to mention in an upcoming episode, then we will see it, because there's not thousands of you. There's, if anything, possibly tens of you. So
yeah, any hot takes or opinions or anything like that, feel free to comment on Instagram or YouTube, or if there is comment feature on Spotify, then Spotify, or message us on the Instagram and follow us at all these different socials. And
yes,
thank you for listening.
Help us grow. But anyway, with that all said, it is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.